Hey guys, it's Rachel Adelicia from Investment Piece. And today I have a big topic that I want to talk about. And I think that it happens to a lot of us. In fact, I know it does. And it recently happened to me. And what I want to talk about is what happens when the thing that you want sells out or you can't get it for whatever reason. Let's be honest, this happens all the time. And it happens with new collections and new stuff in stores, and it happens with vintage stuff. So, really and truly, there are two conversations that we could have. If you want something or you're saving up for something that's new, and we're just going to call that current seasons, and that's any current season, and it sells out of your favorite store, of course, the first thing you're going to do is look at other stores. Google is your friend. You might set up alerts on any of the resale sites, which is always a good tip. I've gotten so many things that way. But with new stuff, there's always a chance you're going to be able to find it, because also newer collections just produce more quantity and there are more sizes and things like that. And in fact, buying at resale might even be a better option. Like, I know I've saved up more than one time for like Gucci or Chanel and couldn't afford it when it was new collection, and then bought it a season later either on The RealReal or Vestiaire or eBay or anything like that. Those are always great options when you can't find newer collections. I'm actually an expert at that kind of shopping. A ton of my stuff is that way. If you need my help, please feel free to reach out to me, because it's like finding unicorns. I love it. But since we've covered new, what happens if the vintage piece that you love sold out? That can happen for a multitude of reasons. First of all, vintage pieces, you're not looking at a full collection usually. You're looking at what someone sold. Like, this is a vintage piece from my collection. It was my great aunt's, and I threw it on with vintage Levi's. You're just risking the chance that no one else is going to buy it first, or if you decide to walk away to save up, or for whatever reason, you're trusting that it will still be there, or you can find one like it. And let's be honest, with vintage, that's a risk. It's flat out a risk. I'm not saying go crazy and buy everything you want all the time, although if you can do that, more power to you. But it's a risk. I'm gonna tell you one of the biggest vintage lessons I've learned, and all my vintage friends will tell you, is that if you really fall in love with a piece, that you should, usually buy it, just because you can't guarantee it will be there. Although the opposite is also true. I found that the pieces that we're really supposed to have always seem to find a way to us. But recently I was shopping on Etsy, and I found this adorable gray cashmere sweater, and then on the middle was embroidered a Corvette. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how, like, first of all, I love juxtaposition. So I love that it was very much a very feminine sweater with like this muscle car on it. And so I was like, oh, I could wear it with like leather pants and jeans and pencil skirts and my Vans and high heels. And like, how great is it? And in the meantime, when I was thinking about all of those things, someone bought it. And my first thought was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I do? So I went to all the sites that I shop, and I Googled Corvette sweater, and I'm trying to think, and I'm like, what do I do? And this crazy idea came to me, and I was like, well, what if I could make it? Now, first of all, kids, I am not crafty. You are never going to see me be like, come over for craft night. Now, ironically enough, I've painted, and I'm not a bad sewer, and I'm a theater major. I was a theater major. I have a theater degree. I had to take like shop and all those things. Like, I can make stuff. My grandfather was a construction worker. I can do that. I just don't. Like, crafts aren't my thing. Let's do art, but yeah, I mean, unless like the craft is opening wine, I'm not in. But stuff like this, I'm weirdly into. So I Googled, is there a way for me to, get like a Corvette patch, and I'll just sew it on a thing? And there was. And I am deadly considering it. And it made me think, like, what do we do when stuff like that happens? And this is really just like almost like a vintage conversation. Because what's fascinating about it, if you look at like, first of all, fashion history, or if you look at just vintage history, even if you're just shopping on Etsy, you're going to find tons of vintage patterns that are based off designers. Like Vogue had patterns, and Ann Taylor had patterns. Everyone had patterns because people made their own clothes. And in fact, even before the turn of the 19th century, when malls actually became a thing and mass-produced clothing became a thing, people were buying patterns from the bourgeois and the royalties dressmakers and making their own dresses. So my instinct to be like, oh, I couldn't find the thing that I wanted, I'll make it, is actually ingrained in fashion history, which is just something weird to think about. And it's also an interesting take because as much as I'm not into crafts, I very much am into how can I take this fashion and make it my own. Right now, I'm sure you've seen there are a ton of places out where you can get your purses monogrammed or painted on or done stuff too. And I love that idea. And of course, I've even thought like, oh, I've had like old hobo wallets. I wonder if I should, just paint my initials on it and then it would be me doing it and how special would that be? And it's also a way to make that piece really my own. And we all know I love how we tell stories with our fashion and how we make it our own. So it really, really got me thinking about that. And then I remembered, so I did this. I didn't make the shoe, obviously. But in my 20s, when I was a broke actress living in LA, and I think I was an assistant at NBC Daytime at the time, and I made like, $8 an hour. I saw shoes like this, and I don't even remember what line it was. I really, really don't. I just remember thinking in my little 23-year-old head, I desperately want shoes like that. I can't afford them. What can I do? And I was like, oh, I know. These are Payless shoes. I spray painted them gold. And I mean, you can somewhat tell they're coming off. Then I went to Michael's or somewhere and I got these feathers and I bound them and I glued them. And they're one of those pieces that are, I mean, this isn't like a fashion stories series, but it is kind of like a fashion story for me, is that I did it because I wanted to prove to myself that I could make fashion my own and I could get what I wanted on my budget. I don't really wear them a lot. I don't think I've ever really worn them, but I love them and I can't give them away. And it kind of goes to what I was thinking of, what happens when you can't, for whatever reason, get the thing that you want. So, apparently I only do crafts if it involves things that I will wear. Maybe that's the answer. I would love to know your tips. Like, what are your resale tips? Where do you resell? I know where I resell and resale shop. First of all, there's so many great vintage places in LA. If you follow me, you know my favorites. There's so many great vintage places in Austin. There are so many great vintage places online. Even recently online, I found a place in North Carolina that I was like, I want to shop there. The internet is your friend, basically, when you're searching for stuff. But also, have you ever made anything? I'm now also fascinated by the idea that we could go get old patterns, and I'm not that great a sewer. I couldn't have it made. I couldn't make it, but could we have that made? What would that look like? Is it a way to be your own designer and not only tell a story with fashion, but really control your fashion? What are your thoughts? I'd really love to hear. You know how to get a hold of me. Email, DM, blog, Instagram. I can't wait to talk to you about it.